possible by the faithful prayers and financial support of listeners just like you. To find out how you can help, visit www.truenews.com.
Welcome to True News Radio for Wednesday, October 25th, 2017. I'm Rick Wiles. Edward Zaw and Zach Drew are here. Theo Hernandez is away on assignment, and Doc Burkhart is off for several days for a personal visit. So we pray for Doc's safe travels, and he'll be back here on Monday. The two stories I want to talk about today is this huge announcement that came out of Saudi Arabia yesterday, that they're going to build this mega futuristic city. And then I also want to talk about plans for an AI god. But before we get into those two stories, I have two topics that I want to talk about briefly. Number one, the stunning revelation that came out yesterday. It's not stunning to us, because we always suspected it. It's just stunning that it finally came out. And I'm referring to the revelation that it was the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee that paid for the so-called Russian dossier that was used to smear President-elect Donald Trump. And then, as president, throughout this year, the news media ran with it. The Democrats rode this horse all year. The Republican Party establishment people also rode that horse. And yet nobody asked the question, who paid for the dossier? Where did it come from? We know that it was a company called Fusion. GPS in Washington, which is a political operations firm for Democrats. They contracted with a former spy in Great Britain, who then worked with intelligence operatives in Russia. They came up with this wild story about Donald Trump having sexual relations with prostitutes in a hotel in Moscow. The entire story fell apart quickly. But the Clintons, the Democratic Party, the media, and even the Republican haters of President Trump have continued to ride this horse, knowing that there's no truth in the allegations. But what we now know is that it was Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee that paid for the thing in the first place.
That's right. And they instructed attorney Mark Elias, which is a longtime attorney for the DNC organizations, and he used Fusion GPS to conduct the research on President Trump. Now, talking about denying it, he denied it himself vigorously this year whenever a New York Times reporter asked him about it. Now, Mr. Elias and his law firm, Perkins Coie, acting on the behalf of the Clintons, they retained Fusion GPS in April 2016. But prior to this, a quote, unknown Republican was funding GPS as well to look up dirt on President Trump. And it was when the Republican donors stopped paying for the research that Mr. Elias continued the search under the orders of the Hillary Clinton campaign.
So there was a deep-pocketed fat cat Republican donor that started this project.
That's right.
And then the Democrats picked up on it. But it started back in 2015, immediately after Donald Trump announced he was running for president. The point is, Hillary Clinton knew that she had paid for it. The Democratic National Committee knew that they had money in it. The media knew it. To me, if this isn't treasonous behavior, if this isn't criminal behavior, what is? I mean, they perpetuated a hoax against the President of the United States and damaged him worldwide.
And that's the key to this, is they went after the presidency, the image of the presidency. Because it's not just simply President Trump. The allegations, and disgusting allegations of that, I remember the day those came out. And you're reading through that document, which had spelling errors and all kinds of crazy things in it, but you're thinking about this. How dare they say this about a president-elect of the United States of America? But the powers that orchestrated this, that worked in this, and as you already mentioned here, Hillary Clinton worked with a foreign spy. I mean, just let that alone for a second. She worked with a foreign spy to do this, but
a spy. She worked for a spy who had worked for Her Majesty the Queen. Let's put this in perspective.
yes. So think about this, Rick. What members of Barack Obama's administration would have had to have been involved in this process? A lot of the officials stayed on until January 20th. This came out around January 10th, January 12th. Do you think that former disgraced FBI Director James Comey was involved? Do you think that the DNI chief, James Clapper, may have had a role?
Wait a minute. We know that John McCain gave a copy. This is his story. When Senator McCain was fingered and named in this scandal, he admitted that he gave a copy to FBI Director James Comey. But we know John McCain is involved in it a lot deeper than just handing a copy over. He said that the dossier was given to him, and as a U.S. Senator, he had no choice other than to take it to the Director of the FBI, James Comey. Now, they were all complicit in this scandal. This was a hoax, but it is a criminal hoax. This isn't just a bad joke. This is a criminal hoax to destroy the elected President of the United States. They damaged his reputation, and they damaged the reputation of the United States of America. And I hope all of our True News listeners around the world, in Great Britain, in Europe, in South America, in Africa, in Australia, New Zealand, please understand what has been revealed here in the United States in the last 24 hours is that the so-called Russian dossier against President Trump is a hoax, and it was paid for with money from Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee. They've been caught red-handed, and they ought to go to prison, but we know they're not going to go to prison, but they should be in prison. The only reason that this came out is because the House Intelligence Committee issued subpoenas to Fusion GPS to turn over records, and they also subpoenaed TD Bank, which is a Canadian bank that operates here in the United States. What is that, Toronto Dominion?
That's correct.
A bank. And so the bank clearly was not going to stonewall a House Intelligence Committee. And so the bank, I'm certain, told Fusion GPS, we're cooperating. We're turning over records. We're not going to take a fall for you guys. Whatever you're involved in, we're out of it. And I think that when the bank said, we're going to submit the records, the banking records of your company to the House Intelligence Committee, that's when they had the evidence on Fusion GPS. That's when the money trail showed up. What was the money trail? Deposits from the Hillary Clinton campaign, deposits from the Democratic National Committee, deposits from an unknown Republican donor, which the House Intelligence Committee obviously knows the identity of the person. It hasn't been released yet. That's why it broke. They've got the goods on them.
And so Fusion GPS, which in a way hired Christopher Steele, but you got to look at the pyramid here.
So Zach, to make it clear for our audience, Christopher Steele is the former spy for Great Britain.
That's correct. And Fusion GPS used him. But who hired Fusion GPS was the attorney for the DNC, Mark Elias. Now, just how much money was he getting to funnel to places who knows where? Now, here's where it comes down to, Rick. Since June of 2015, the combined total that the DNC and the Hillary Clinton campaign has paid to Mark Elias is $9.2 million.
The Hillary Clinton campaign?
and the DNC combined.
They gave the attorney
$9.2 million.
That's a well-paid hitman. Political hitman in this case.
So who was he funneling that money to? Who was he paying off?
My guess would be more than Fusion GPS. So now the whole can of worms is opening up. The House Intelligence Committee has banking records now showing where money went. Oh, this is getting very interesting. Well, obviously President Trump had something to say about it today. He said, it was a shame that he'd been smeared like this, and that Mrs. Clinton and the DNC have been embarrassed by the release of the information. But I'm just waiting to see, and I'm saying this facetiously, I'm waiting to see CNN and MSNBC and the Washington Post apologize to President Trump and the American people. They need to apologize to the American people. You lied to us. They lied to us. They knowingly lied to the American people to smear the President of the United States. It wasn't that they just had wrong information. They paid for it. And they knew that it was a hoax. They knew it was a plot to smear the President. They knowingly lied to the American people. Anderson Cooper, all of these people at CNN, MSNBC, the Washington Post, New York Times, they lied. They lied. They lied. They lied over and over and over.
And Rick, by the same logic that they've been attempting to convict President Trump in the arena of public opinion, Hillary Clinton conspired with this official. She conspired with a foreign government to attempt to alter the U.S. election system.
The very thing that they accused Donald Trump of doing is what they did. They worked with a foreign spy in Great Britain who then worked with Russian spies to change the election, to change the outcome of the election. This was actually released after the election in order to stop his inauguration.
You're absolutely right. This is the definition of gaslighting. We had an entire show on this subject of gaslighting. They did the very thing they accused their opponent of doing.
Well, I want to know the name of the Republican who paid for it. And I want to know John McCain's involvement. I want to see the fingerprints he left all over this dossier. I hope these people are shaking in Washington. The people should be outraged at what they did. Well, thank God the Lord has vindicated President Trump. Let's give the honor to Jesus Christ. Let's glorify God, because they have fallen into their own trap. And look at what's happening now with the Russia investigation. Podesta's brother is now under investigation for the Uranium One scandal. Now there's a scandal. There is a real scandal where the Clintons pocketed money, lots of money, Russian money, in order to persuade the corrupt Obama administration to sell to Russia 20% of America's uranium. Those people should be in prison for bribery, for corruption.
And where is the United States' 20% of uranium anyway?
Well, part of this is actually, the company you're mentioning here is actually based out of Canada, and they actually count part of Kazakhstan's nuclear minerals as part of that 20%. I found that incredibly interesting. Me and Zach read this last week.
Run that by me again.
As part of that number that's used, the 20% of U.S. Reserves of uranium, fissile material, and basic minerals, they're also including the minerals that are based in Kazakhstan.
Why?
Because post-Cold War, the United States has had stewardship over that region's rich uranium resources.
After what war?
The Cold War.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, it was very shocking when reading through, see, why is Kazakhstan in these reports? Well, if you read through the Uranium One scandal, it ties back to Kazakhstan and their Uranium One minerals. They were tied in with the Canadian company. Now, some of these minerals